Hello everyone, welcome back to Neffy Cat. We're so glad that you can join us today. Thank you very much. Today, I want to talk about the differences between stocks and bonds. Yes, what do you know about stocks and bonds? Do you know that they're types of investments? Yes, they are. So, I've used this symbol before, but this is an old stock certificate that I've gotten, and it is very, very old. I do believe it dates back to around 1920. Let's see here, yes. 1920. I have a restless little kitty here today. There we are. And yes, and then of course, this is a good representation of the stock market. And sometimes, of course, it can go crazy like this. This little tail is moving the market. Yes, you're affecting the stocks. Yes, you're making the prices change. Yes, you are. But let's define these things and help you understand them before I do, though, quickly. This is a symbol of a bond, and I've got this for a reason, and I'll explain it as we go along. Oh, this impatient tail. So this impatient tail can help us realize that a stock is a piece of an ownership in a company. It may be a itsy piece of the pie of that company, but it's just a piece of the company, and so you are technically a partial owner when you buy into a stock. And then let's now contrast that to a bond. So this was interesting and is something I didn't used to know. If you buy a bond, you are loaning a company, if it's a corporate bond, you're loaning somebody money so that they hold it. I have the symbol of these lights here because it's held for a certain amount of time. You can't touch that money for a certain amount of time, often up to, several years, up to 30 years. But you have a certain amount of time there that you can't touch that money. And with that, you're paid interest usually twice a year. And when the bond matures, it's called maturing, when that time is up, you get all that original principal back. Okay, very fun. Usually people think of credit and they think of, well, I'm going to lend or I'm going to borrow money from the bank for a house or for a car. Well, when you're buying a bond, you're lending them your money. And the different companies and places pay you different interest rates for that for the time that you let that money stay. And you let them still have access to it. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly review. We've already talked about types of stocks, but so I won't go into details here, but there's ETF stocks, there's index funds, dividend funds, and high growth stocks. High growth stocks are oftentimes the smaller companies that are newer, that have all sorts of potential. Like, let's say the company IBM, when it first started, if somebody had bought into that stock when it first went IPO and it held it, they'd be doing well, because it grows over time. And as the company matures, it gets older, and usually the prices tend, not always, but tend to be a little more stable. And you can consider that more like for dividend investment and so forth. They're considered a lower risk, as we know, as I talked about before. But now let's go into types of bonds, because this is something that I knew very little about before. So corporate bonds, those are specific companies. So let's say that you bought into, I'll use Tesla as an example. They're considered a higher yield rate than other types of bonds. And after a certain amount of time, they have to pay you back for it. That's called a corporate bond. There's also an investment bond that's it's considered a little less risky. And there's a municipal bond, and a lot of you have probably heard of that. A municipal bond, you'll see cities, states, and so forth, towns, they will sometimes issue municipal bonds, and that gives them funds for things like schools, their roads, infrastructure, things that they may need. They may borrow some money from people, from investors who buy into the bonds, and then pay them back later. Sometimes they just, a city may even just need some more cash flow. And so if they issue bonds and people buy into that, that gives them more money is available. And then there's also, let's go into the other area of U.S. Treasury bonds. That is a very common one you've probably heard of too. They have Treasury bills, which are short-term bonds that are up to a year that you can buy into them, and they pay out twice a year on their interest. And then there's one called notes that are longer term. They can be up to like 10 years. And then there's a bond that is called a bond, a type of U.S. Treasury bond. That is a long term that you can have for up to 30 years. And then there's one that's called TIPS. So there's reasons why people invest or trade into stocks versus bonds. Stocks? Oh, this is Daisy, everyone. This is our doggie. She's a full pit bull, and she has made friends with Nefertim, although I always do supervise this. So stocks are considered good investments for people who are willing to risk more money, and they tend to be more volatile. Bonds, people want their money to be secured, usually when they go into a bond. Oh my. So we have an interested little doggy here. Yes.
You come on. I have to go back to work. Come on.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's Auntie Lisa. Yes. So bonds, a lot of times people buy into when they're wanting a more steady income, and they're considered less risky than stocks are, as I was just mentioning. They pay out twice a year, most of them do, and if a person has enough invested, that can be considered a stable income. You will see the same thing in the stock market with dividend stocks. And of course, when the bond does mature, you get the whole amount back. You don't have to risk losses or gains on that initial amount that you invest. In stocks, unfortunately, you are risking, unless you're buying options, that's a whole another topic for a video. But if you're buying options, those are considered more risky even still, and less principal, though, is often involved. Yes, and I'm going to see if somebody will play. But so far, he's not. Well, thank you all so much for sharing today with me and watching this video and with Nefertim. And please don't forget to take those paws and hit the like button. Also, please hit the subscribe button, and you can hit the notification bell to get all of his educational videos and all the other ones too. Thank you all so much. Thank you for sharing this day with us, and you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.